Hey guys. Okay, so I just finished grading all of your rhetorical analyses, and while typically I would just grade a few every day and give you grades as I go along, I noticed a trend early on as I was grading them in that a lot of you seem to have misunderstood what a rhetorical analysis is and should be. I'm not upset. It's not a big deal. It just means that we need to kind of regather our efforts and to try again a little bit. So what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to go through some of the common things that I saw across the board in a lot of your documents, and then I'm going to talk about what's called a revise and resubmit, a particular option that I'm going to give you. So let's get started. Okay, so here I have a simple Word document, and I'll just put issues I saw in lots of reports. This is not singling anyone out, just so you know. There were, challenges across the board, and that's totally okay. I mean, this is a learning process, and sometimes what I do when I assign something like this is that I give lots of feedback at the rough draft stage. For you guys, what I wanted to see was the best and most polished version of what you could come up with, and then see where we landed. And some of you kind of missed the mark, and so now I'm offering another option. Okay, so one of the first big issues is that you had too much description and not enough analysis. Analysis. Okay, remember, I can't spell and I suffer from what I call public typing, and so I often, if I'm in a classroom, I'll need your help to spell things for me. Great. Okay, so some of you did a great job. You found, say, a particular artifact and you described everything about it, and it was great, and I'm like totally digging it. And then you stopped and you went on to the next artifact and you described it in a lot of detail. And there was never a moment where you stopped and then said, okay, let's analyze what I just described. Okay, so remember that analysis, and description are not same thing. Okay, one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to minimize this down so it doesn't keep bouncing around on us, because that's pretty annoying. There, that should all fit into the screen. Okay, so that's thing number one. The second thing I noticed, some did analysis, but not of rhetorical strategies. Okay, so some of you offered really great criticism of a particular artifact or even of the company itself, but oftentimes it didn't have a whole lot to do with the company's strategies for marketing or what their communication habits are. Sometimes this happened if you were someone who found a lot of outside sources, sort of like newspaper articles about the company or expert opinions on the company's performance and that sort of thing. Again, those things aren't bad, but remember that the purpose of this is to take a piece of communication that a company has put out, and it is a complete and tidy box with a bow and everything, right? And it is there, and it functions to persuade its audience in some fashion. And your job is to take the lid off of that piece of correspondence, that piece of advertising, what have you, and dig around and figure out how they put it together, what choices did they make in putting that thing together, and how do those choices impact their audience. Okay, so if you were analyzing, say, that a company, quote, does a really good job at X, Y, or Z because, U.S. News and World Report says Bakety Bak, that's just completely off track. You don't need outside sources to be able to take a commercial as this complete unit or artifact of communication and unpack its contents. Okay, so remember that your goal is to actually analyze yourself things and not necessarily rely on other people's analysis of them. Okay, so the third thing, some seemed to be trying to persuade me, your audience, that a company is good or responsible or ethical or whatever. Okay, so instead of kind of taking a neutral stance, some of you chose a product that you're actually really passionate about, or a company you're really passionate about, and that's totally okay. But what happens when what happens when you really care about a company and you really believe in a company is that you don't make a very objective observer of their communication strategies. So instead, what I saw a lot of was I really believe that this company cares about this particular social issue, and here's why I believe that, and you, the reader, me, should also believe it, right? Again, that's not the point of the assignment. So what you'd be saying is basically circular reasoning. You'd say company X is a socially responsible company because the company says they're socially responsible, right? Or these tacos are really good because the company says they're good. This company cares about African Americans because they have a really great statement about Black Lives Matter, right? And so what happens is that you're kind of getting into the circular reasoning of you're not analyzing. It's a logical fallacy. It's the company is good because they say they're good, right? Round and round it goes. And what that does then is it limits your analysis. Remember, instead, is that you take that statement about Black Lives Matter, for example, right? Again, that's this piece of communication. It is a tidy and tight, well thought out, strategic choice that they're making, right? And you need to unpack how they made that choice and what their choices to make this product mean for their audience. Okay, it's something very different than they claim to be good and here's how they prove it, right? Like that's not the point. Okay, so here's the next one. Some of you seem to buy into a given company's projected image of being socially responsible. I got this on a lot of them, so don't feel singled out. This happened to well over half of you. Okay, so the issue with this is that when a company does have lots of statements about social issues, it kind of conflates things a little bit. It makes it honestly a little harder. So remember back in my lecture before where I was describing what a rhetorical analysis is, I used the company of Dove soap. Okay, so Dove soap products have this, what is it called, the Real Women campaign, and they have models who are of all different shapes and sizes, of all different ethnicities and races, and it's this sort of feel-good message, right? And what happens a lot of times is that when someone, say in my freshman composition class, decides to do a rhetorical analysis of Dove, is that they buy into it. They're like, this company is so different from other soap companies. They really care about women and they care about these movements. That may or may not be true. Honestly, we can't tell. But the reality is what they're doing is they're using this feel-good campaign to sell you soap. Okay, so in every single case that you guys seem to buy into the socially responsible projected image, it was because they have statements on Black Lives Matter, they have statements on COVID, they have statements on gay pride, or whatever other socially responsible thing the particular company cares about. And I guess the issue then becomes you're not being objective, right? You are actually being persuaded. Right? You have already been persuaded by their message, and that makes it really hard for you to take the box and open it up and say, where do I see logos, pathos, and ethos enacted in this Black Lives Matter statement? How are they using this statement to sell more of their product? Right? In some ways, you have to be a little bit of a cynic. It almost would have been easier, and maybe we can talk about this later, if the assignment would have been easier. Sorry, I had a bit of a mishap. I think my speakers just died on me. But would it have been easier if I had told you to pick a company you hate? right? A company that that you have no respect for? Would it have been easier to be a skeptic, to be an observer, to back up from whether or not you like the company? I don't care if you like chocolate or ice cream or whatever it is that you chose to do, right? I care about you looking at the communication strategy. Remember, the purpose of the assignment was for you to be able to understand how a company puts all this stuff together to create a strategy, a piece of communication that then persuades an audience to do something. Most often it is to purchase something, right? And if you've bought into that message, you can't then very easily unpack that. And the idea then is that when you are in a company and you are tasked with coming up with a communication strategy or a piece of marketing or what have you, I want you to be able to know about the choices that you're making. I want you to know if you have some social issue that you have to address because you're the social media content developer for a major corporation, right? And you're thinking, okay, well, we have to address this social issue because our customer base is largely African American. How can we best do that, right? So that our credibility, our ethos continues, so that people still respect us and feel good about us, pathos, so that we still are the logical choice of where to purchase said item. Okay, you get the idea. So in order, like, the idea is, remember, is to unpack so that when you are responsible for creating products, you know what you're packing into it. Okay, so the last thing then of sort of the kind of the big problem issues, number 5 was that some of you, again, some noted that a particular company has a campaign or has given donations for a good cause, therefore they must be a good company, right? Again, it's circular reasoning. So here's a question for you. Is it possible for a company to do amazing things as a company and not talk about it? Absolutely it is, right? So their choice to advertise the fact that they are donating to a cause or that they have some campaign is still part of their rhetorical strategy, so that you trust them, so that you have good thoughts about them, so that you buy things from them. Okay? There are companies that a couple of you did actual nonprofits, and it gets a little dicier there when the whole purpose of them is to, quote, do good. But the issue just becomes, if a company is advertising about its donations, why are they advertising? I don't advertise every time I donate. I'd be advertising a fair bit, actually. I donate a lot. But to what end, right? A company is perfectly within, it's within reason that a company could make huge donations, to amazing good causes and not use it as a marketing strategy. Okay? And so that's where I need you guys to, again, back off and to be that skeptic a little bit, to make sure that you're not getting sucked in and believing that they're an amazing company. Instead, you're looking at, why would they choose to, I don't mean to sound like a cynic, because donations, yay, right? But instead it's, why would they choose to advertise it? Because they want to make sure that it is part of their brand. It is part of who they are. It is part of their strategy and their rhetorical stance. They want their company to be held up, to be respected, to maintain their customer base, all so on and so forth. Hopefully you're getting the idea. So what's to be done about it? This is not meant to make any of you feel bad. All of you had room for improvement, right? That's just the case. Even if you got a phenomenal grade that you're completely satisfied, there's always room for improvement. Some of you did have a little bit more room for improvement, and that's okay. So I'm giving you the option of a revise and resubmit. Okay, revise and resubmit is a phrase that gets used a lot in academic publishing, and that means when I actually become a published author. So it is one of the areas of publishing you could go into as a career. Okay, so revise, resubmit. What happens is that, say I have an article that I have completed and I submit it to a journal. That journal then sends it out to blind peer reviews, people that I don't know and will never know their names, right? And those blind peer reviewers come back with comments, and they come back with one of a several different sort of verdicts, if you will. One, they could just flat out reject it, say, no, this is garbage, we don't want it, right? The next they might do is they might accept the piece, and typically it is accepted with revisions. So they're saying, yes, we definitely want this article to be published within our journal. You've got a little bit of tweaking to do, okay? But the most common response, and the one that frankly I always am hoping for, at least, I mean, if you got an acceptance, my gosh, that'd be amazing, but it's kind of rare that happens. Instead, what most often happens is that you get a revise and resubmit. And so basically what they're saying is that they see real value in the article that's in front of them, but it's not in a place that they can give approval for publication. So you get kind of a mulligan. You get to do a do-over. You get to take their comments, go back, and revise the whole thing and then submit it again for publication. Sometimes articles in academic publishing take several rounds of that. I had an article that it took me, I started trying to publish it in approximately 2013, and the article finally was in print in 2018. So it was several different journals, several different like revise, resubmit, or rejections, right? It was this whole process. That's academic publishing for you. So for you guys, I'm giving you the option of revise, resubmit. On your documents, I have given you thorough comments. I've given you this lecture, so hopefully you can kind of get some more general ideas. You can also ask me for help, and then it is your option to revise, resubmit. I'll have a deadline on it. I'm not sure yet because I haven't looked at the dates and stuff, but it'll be on the assignment itself. And then you just have the option of moving forward and trying again on this assignment. Now, this is going on at the same time other things are going on, so it's entirely up to you whether you choose to do this or just keep the grade that you got and move forward. That's perfectly acceptable as well. Okay, if you've got any questions, as always, you know how to email me. Otherwise, I will let you go and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.